Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Wellness Matters. Today, I have such a wonderful guest. Her name is Melanie Monaco. She is a self love coach and sacred ritual facilitator. She trains and certifies self love coaches. She supports spiritual business owners and offers a variety of programs, workshops, and more to share the transformational magic of self love. I mean, that bio right there just makes me like so happy.
Oh,
So, yeah, I just want to let the listeners know how I even found you. So,
yeah.
I belong to this woman. Her name is Sarah Jenks. If you don't know her, you really got to look her up. I'm part of her Holy Woman group where we meet every new moon, so once a month, and then for the full moon, I think I got this right. She ask people that are in the group to possibly facilitate the full moon, or do you have to like seek her out? I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a process where they say they like open it up and if you have an offering that's a good fit for it, you pitch
yes.
your offering and if they vibe with it, I don't know what the whole process is like for them behind the scenes, but the
Yeah.
way that I facilitated the full moon ceremony is Monique, I think, sent out an email and was like, if any of you have
Mm.
gifts you want to offer the sisterhood, let us know. And I was like, based on the work that I do, I was like, I really feel that my offerings vibe with the community and I'd love to show up in service that way. So that's how it worked out.
Absolutely. So we just had our full moon last week. It was the wolf moon. I didn't know much about it, but I jumped on call where Melanie was doing the full moon facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to jump off halfway through though because I had a doctor's appointment and I was so bummed. But anyway, I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love her energy. You actually remind me so much of Sarah Jenks. We were just kind of talking about some similarities before we started recording. But, anyways, Melanie, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be able to connect more. And I love sharing the message of self love. And I love hearing other people's stories too. And every chance that I get to really go deep with somebody on the power of this work is like such a blessing for me. So
Yeah,
thank you so
I
much
can
for
only
holding this
imagine.
space.
Like, even just as you were just talking about the fact that you are a self love coach, like, I
Mm-hmm.
know that there's lots of coaches out there, but thinking just right now of self love, I don't really know a whole lot of people that can wholeheartedly say they genuinely love all parts of themselves. So
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you think that that's maybe something that's like a huge thing that most humans need to, like, maybe we were here to, the whole point of being alive is to one lesson at a time learn to love yourself piece by piece, and then when you're done, you're done. I don't know. What do you think
Oh,
about
I
that?
love that. That's a great idea. Yeah, why not? I
Yeah, I was
think
just
there's
like,
so many possibilities. I can't tell you the full meaning of life. That's not
you
information that
can't
I have
just
access to.
always.
But I love that idea. I think that's a great hypothesis.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's definitely how I'm living my life and how I approach my work and the work that I do with people as a coach. I didn't start as a self-love coach. It kind of happened by, I was going to say by accident, but it felt kind of like by miraculousness, like a miracle
Yes, please
because
tell us how you got here.
yeah, I mean, I struggled so much. We were just before you started recording talking about like the struggles young girls have with their bodies
Hmm.
and so yeah, I struggled so much in my relationship to my body. I was put on my first diet when I was 7 years old. And I look back at photos of myself and I'm like, what? Like, I hold a lot of like understanding and forgiveness for the people who raised me, my parents and grandmothers, but they had their own stuff around their bodies and that was really
Hmm.
projected onto me. And so I was put on my first diet when I was 7 and I look at pictures of myself. I'm like, what? Like, but it was the 90s and it was a different time. It was heroin chic fashion
Yep.
everywhere, which like definitely is coming back. It makes me super worried. But I think that at the time, when you're being, and so many of us have had this story, you're being conditioned and told that like you have to look a certain way. Like it is
Right.
life or death circumstances as a child, especially. You're like, if I don't look a certain way, are my parents still going to love me? And
Mm-hmm.
that creates like deep rifts in our relationship to self and
Absolutely.
deep rifts in our relationships to food. And as human beings, we need food to survive. So to have such a rift with not only the people who you rely upon to keep you alive, but the substance you rely upon to keep you alive is such a recipe for a really traumatic experience for everyone. And so
Absolutely.
over my adolescence, I mean, I really felt, and I was just taller. Like I got my period younger, I got
Mm-hmm.
boobs when I was like 12, like
Yeah.
I just went through that expansion and in a really quick way, I guess, compared to a lot of my peers.
Yeah.
And so I just was like constantly battling my body from like 8 years old, 7 years old, like crying about it all the time, which of course ended up in an eating disorder as soon as I knew what an eating, like as soon as I heard in middle school people talking about anorexia and they're like, and bulimia, they're like, don't do this. I'm like, oh, thanks for giving me the rule book on like what exactly to do to lose weight. It was like the opposite of what they wanted to happen, and was being supported by my parents when I'd be like, I'm not eating, more than 900 calories today. I would get
Oh
like
my God.
congratulated. And
Oh
so
man.
I know. And the thing is, as I said, like I don't want to speak ill of my parents. They were doing the
Right.
best they could with what they had. But it really was a horrible situation for me and my body. So fast forward a little bit, my mom was a yoga teacher, and I was doing yoga with her and as a means to like work out and
Right.
lose weight. I was like dabbling into spirituality. My great uncle was a shaman. So like I grew up in ceremony and ritual, and we didn't go to church every Sunday. So my through line into spirituality was when we would do ceremonies with my great uncle. He lived in a different state, so it wasn't like every single, season, but it was during big family events. Um, and my grandmother was like really into angels, like really into Louise Hay type of
Yes.
positivity. So I had like all these beautiful spiritual influences, um, but not in like, an everyday type of being. So when my mom was getting really into yoga and teaching yoga, we did a Kundalini yoga retreat together. And I was like vibing with the spiritual stuff, but I was more in it to lose weight. And I
Mm.
didn't lose, and I was 17. I didn't lose a pound. Of course, that's not the point of a
Right.
Kundalini yoga
Right.
retreat and cleanse. But I remember doing a specific practice in Kundalini called the ego eradicator. And I remember having this aha moment where it just dawned on me that I didn't have to hate myself. I didn't have to hate my body, that was a choice I was making.
Oh my God, I love that.
And yeah, but I mean, I still had like 5 years of eating disorders ahead of me, but it was the first seed that was planted in that journey. And
Yeah.
so simultaneously, I was walking this pathway of like, okay, I'm starting to expand my spirituality. Like at that point, I was starting to do oracle cards and like chakra meditations all the time. I was getting really into Doreen Virtue, like who was really big
Yes.
back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like going to new age bookstores and like praying to the goddess. And I was starting to really go into my own expansion of what my spiritual practices were. And I started to notice the dissonance of how could I be treating my body this way if my body is a gift from the
Mm-hmm.
goddess, right? How could I be treating my body this way if I am just as much a part of nature and the miraculousness of all things, right? And I
Right.
started to question that. And it took a long time because nobody was talking about self love like that
Right.
back then.
Right.
And I just had to like completely patchwork resources together in order to find my way out of it. And I couldn't even tell you it was like one practice or one thing that helped me. It was really just being on that path of exploration and spiritual development, and then diving into understanding more about food and understanding more about nutrition and utilizing that information in a way that was like helpful and not hurtful, which is a fine line. You know, I definitely
Yes.
went, I was like a raw foodist for a while, thinking that that was the healthiest thing for me to do. But like, it was just a masked eating disorder.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
you know, and like the
Right.
juice cleanse craze, like I was all about it, thinking like I'm so healthy, but I was just trying to lose weight. And it wasn't until my early 20s where I finally just was like, F it. Like I'm done. You know, I'm done hating myself. And and it was the best thing that ever happened to me to be able to just make that decision. And again, it wasn't like a specific moment in time. It was a process and a journey to get there. Um, but I
Wow.
also, like, following in my mom's footsteps, decided, you know, when I graduate college, I'll teach yoga as like, you know, just my side gig. Why not? And I started teaching yoga. I got my yoga teacher certification when I was in college. I studied in college the psychology of transformation, which I loved, a bunch of other things. I got my degree in liberal arts, and I really loved doing theater, and I loved doing music. My husband and I have a music studio in our house that he runs.
Oh
And
my
so
God, how cool.
yeah, we like really, we're really creative people. And I thought I was going to be in New York City, which is where I lived after college. I thought I was going to be in New York City, like as a performing artist. And that is definitely not the path for me.
No.
I figured that out really quickly. I was like, I actually really prefer being in yoga studios and like healing centers. So I started
Yes.
gathering more trainings and certifications. And um, yeah, I mean, I got more into energy healing, and I got my health coaching certification. And so that's what I started offering people, like people who were coming to my workout classes and yoga classes. I started being like, wait, like, what if we also were helping you learn how to exist in like a really happy state with your body? And, you know, what if I wasn't just offering like movement classes, but it was also like coaching? And
Mm.
so I started thinking I was like doing wellness and health coaching.
Yeah.
And then the
Wait,
women
did
that
you
were,
get your certification through IIN?
I did. Yeah.
I did too.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, gold
That's
standard.
cool. Yes, yes. Love it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and I was partnering things that I had learned through IAN with what I had learned about archetypal psychology when I went and studied with Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, which I brought in
Mm.
that full moon circle, some
Yes,
of her work.
yes.
Yeah. And energy work. So I was like patchworking together all of these different things. And then the women who started coming to work with me for my coaching all hated their bodies. And I was
Mm.
like, I was a baby entrepreneur. You know, I was like starting to get my message out there, wanting to like make this my job. And again, I kept hearing from the marketing experts, like, you need to tell your story. You have to be
Right.
authentically you. You have to claim yourself, and you have to be in your self energy. And I was like, I don't want to talk about my body stuff. Like, I
Right.
don't want to talk about my eating disorders. Like, I don't want to talk about that I hated myself. I want to show up as if I was perfect the entire time. You know,
Can I do
like I don't
that?
want anybody to know that I'm imperfect and that I've ever struggled.
Right. I think that's the hardest part about doing this work, is like
Yeah.
being able to be vulnerable and say what we've gone through so that way
Yeah.
we can help others. But at the same time, it's like so cringy.
It is. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
then on top of it, it's like, you know, what does that mean for my parents, you know, to hear about
Right.
this? What
Right.
does
Yeah.
that mean, you know, for the people who love me, who I haven't
Yeah.
told about this? You know, I kept my eating disorder a secret. Like
Okay.
nobody knew. Because thank God it never got to the point where I was like, you know, needing to be hospitalized. I just kept
Right.
it real under wraps. And I mean, if anybody like actually looked for it, they would definitely find it. But, you
Right.
know, it was, people were like, oh, yeah, it's really normal to count calories to an excessive degree. And like,
Mm.
newsflash, it is not. It's not
It is
normal.
not. No.
No. So, you know, I started realizing, oh, okay, maybe like, is this the work I'm supposed to be doing? I was so resistant about it. But I realized that, as so many of us who are healers and practitioners of different types end up realizing, it's like, your medicine comes from your trauma and your
Mm-hmm.
challenge.
I literally just did a podcast yesterday basically saying you need to die to be reborn. And I was
Yeah.
talking about how going through those dark places in us that we don't want others to see, but then realizing that medicine is on the other side of that and being okay with that. It's doing it is the hard part. But I would say the more you do it, the more you start um, unraveling, the easier it becomes. Like it's still raw and hurts, but like that the medicine's on the other side, so that gives you like the confidence to keep going. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny you say that because I was literally just talking about that just yesterday. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's really, I mean, it's coming up a lot in a lot of the work that I do. I think there's kind of a collective awakening
yeah,
of
I
that. Or,
agree.
I mean,
Yeah,
or maybe it's just like really a message that so many of us are just sinking our teeth into right now.
right.
Um, but it's really, I think, powerful and healing to be in that recognition
Oh
of the
yeah,
gifts of hardship and the gifts of adversity. And when I claimed that, I mean, my business took off, and the things that I wanted to manifest of like being able to travel around the world, seeing clients wherever I was, support myself through my offerings happened. And so it was as soon as I like let myself be vulnerable and I was like, oh, I am not destined to be like a wellness coach telling people like what non-toxic products are best or
right,
what
right.
types of foods are healthiest or like what type of workout they should be doing. I'm supposed to be a self-love coach. I'm supposed to be guiding people and healing their relationships to their bodies and food so that they can do the workout that feels best for their body, so they can eat the food that's most
Yes.
nourishing, so that they can
Mhm.
show up in those ways of honoring themselves. It's
I was
like
just
doing the
yeah. I was
yeah,
just
doing
thinking that too. Like when I was doing the IIN class myself, like I thought, do I really want clients and talk to them exactly about like calories and what they should be eating? Or not that you would be talking about calories, but you know what I mean? Like just nutrition and all that. Is that
Mhm.
really what, like I went into it thinking maybe that's what I want to do, but actually what out of all of it, it's like where I feel the most pull is like what our soul wants. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so it's weird how you kind of get into these rabbit holes and they lead you to all these different places, but you have no idea. The end result usually is a little bit different, like you were saying.
Oh
It's
my
usually
gosh, yeah.
different than what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, even now, like I'm in a totally different place in my offerings in business than I ever thought I would be. At
Yeah.
that point, like
Yeah.
when I decided I'm self-love coaching, I couldn't have predicted that I'd be doing the work that I'm doing now. Like it's just such a journey and it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it's always choices that I'm making. It feels very guided and very much like one
Yes.
opportunity presents itself and somebody asks for something and if I say yes to rising up to meet that need, then this whole new
Yeah.
thing
Creation.
unfolds. Yeah, it's really cool. I love that about the process of being an entrepreneur or being, somebody
Hmm.
who's in a line of service of healing and a spiritual awakening. But yeah, I started doing self-love work and I got deeper into understanding. I did a training on intuitive eating, which I had like done some of that work myself, but then being able to offer it to clients was really helpful, giving me framework for that. And yeah, my conversations with people really went from like, what are the habits you need to form in order to feel the way you want to feel? And
Hmm.
instead went into like shadow work of like, where did you learn how to hate your body? And like, what does your body want you to know? What is your body screaming out to you? And how can we answer her call? And like, those are two
Mm.
very different ways of working with people.
Yes. And it's
Yeah.
not something that's like out there like for everybody to see, I feel like that's why I really love doing podcasts to this degree in spirituality and self growth and all of that because it allows people to see that we all kind of suffer from the same problems, but we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
keep handling them in the old ways of solving things.
Yeah.
So like the
Yeah.
way the work that you're doing is so beneficial to so many people because it's a new way of thinking, almost a new way of seeing and realizing that I can really get to the root of
Mm-hmm.
where my eating disorder came from. It's not just, it's not just that I'm broken. There is a reason. Like there's something deep down in there. And
Yeah.
yeah. So how did you happen upon becoming a self-love coach? Like, did you have to take like a certification, or did you just kind of birth
No.
your process?
No, self-love coach certification did not exist. So as
Yeah,
I said, I
yeah.
just patchworked things together. Because I had my health coach certification, I'd
Hmm.
done my archetypal psychology training, I had my bachelor's degree, I did my yoga teacher training, I did multiple energy healing certifications, I did my
Yeah.
intuitive eating, I did group fitness instruction, meditation, like breath work, like I just was like, like picking all these things, having the best time in my early 20s, just like educating myself really, for myself, and then realizing, oh, you know what? I actually like this idea of entrepreneurship and being of service as well. And so then as I was working, I reached the point in my business where I was supporting myself. My husband at the time was working with fine visual artists who one of them was like having shows around Europe. And so I got to just like travel Europe with him while he was doing
Oh,
his stuff with visual artists and like
so
having meetings at the Louvre. I
cool.
was like, and I
What?
was just like there in Paris with him, seeing clients from our little like hotel rooms and living the dream.
Oh my
It was like the
gosh.
digital nomad dream. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was such a fun period in my business. And that was 2018 ish. Yeah, 2018, 29. Yeah, 2018, 2019. And then what happened? It was during that period of time. We went to Europe twice. We were like traveling to California, where I grew up. We went to New Zealand and Fiji. We just had the most fun. And during one of those trips, I was in the Czech Republic and I had a consultation with a woman who I thought was like signing up to do my self love program. And she was like, oh, I actually don't want to work with you as a client. I want to be a self love coach. She's like, so
Oh.
where did you do your training? And I was like, well,
Well, let me
here's the
see.
here's the list. And
Yeah.
like the thousands of dollars I invested and like all of the different mentors I worked with. And she was like, well, could you just mentor me? And I was like, what? Who am I to do that? I was like, I'm a coach. I'm not like a trainer. Like I'm not going to train you to be a coach. Who am I to do that? And then
Yeah.
I realized like, well, you know what? There isn't a self-love coach training out
Yeah.
there. And like this work is so needed. And who am I not to do this? So in early 2020, it was April 2020, um, it was the perfect time to like hunker down and create something. So
Mm-hmm.
I created a self-love coach training course. And the timing of it was that people were looking for different ways to
Right.
support themselves and like had all this time to be by themselves and realized I need to do something else in my life. And so it took off. And um, has just been the most fun experience. Now I'm in the fourth year of it, and I've had hundreds of graduates from all around the world.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and it's really great. It's internationally accredited. So I did I did my best to like check off the boxes of making sure it's really ethical and safe and like meets the
Mm,
standards. And because coaching as an industry is unregulated in a lot of ways, which I think has its benefits and its challenges. There's a lot of coaches out there who are doing amazing work, who are helping people heal in ways they wouldn't be able to heal otherwise, because there are tools at our disposal that are different than the tools other practitioners can offer. My best
mm-hmm.
friend from high school is a marriage and family counselor therapist, and she and I talk a lot about the differences in our work. And I get the question a lot of like, what's the difference between working with you and working with a therapist? And it is like, they're both fruit trees. They're really nourishing, but it's apples and oranges. They have
Yeah.
totally different vitamin and mineral profiles. And as
100%.
coaches, what we can do is just for me like so much juicier and what I feel like excites me. Like with my clients, like it's ethical for me to talk about past life work, and it's ethical for me to talk about like plant medicine and essential oils and energy work. But for my best friend who's a therapist, that wouldn't necessarily be ethical, but she can treat and diagnose things, you know, which is great for people who need that clinical support.
So
I don't work
true.
with people who need that clinical support. You know, the way that
Yeah.
I, especially when I was working primarily as a self-love coach, just with one-on-one and group clients before I started training other people, you know, I told people that I fill that space between people who don't have full-on eating disorders, but people who might have disordered eating patterns, who don't
Mm.
need the clinical support, who don't need the clinical supervision, who probably don't need medication, who don't need that type of care, but still need support and still need something so that they don't get to that point, you know. And
Right.
it's kind of like an in-between limbo where I was, as I said, for so many years. Like I never got to a point, thank goodness, of like being in that kind of danger or having that level of depression or, you know, clinical stuff in my psyche. But I still could have really benefited from somebody who
Oh,
had some type of
absolutely.
framework to offer me that wasn't so intense, but like
Mm.
met my needs where I was at. So that's like the gap that I was filling. And when I started training people as self-love coaches, it then became so much more than just working on the body and food. It became so much bigger because people were coming to me with all different lived experiences and
Right.
different things that were keeping them from self-love. So it might be body related things that keep us from self-love, but it might be like self-worth in relationships. It might
Mm.
be like success in career stuff. It might be like your home environment. It might, you know, there's so many different factors at play. And so people from all different walks of life, all different cultures, like all different ethnicities, all different lived experiences started coming to do the self-love work. And I just realized that it's so much bigger
Oh, yeah.
than what I was working on with my clients. But the work that I was doing was adaptable to all different lived experiences. So I developed what you heard in the full moon circle. I developed a framework that I recognized early on in my coaching career that a lot of my clients were following and that I myself had gone through, which I call the self-love roadmap. One of my team members calls it the self-love cycle. You could call it whatever you want, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a 5-step framework to get you to self-love, and it's self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, self-gratitude, self-care, and self-trust. And each of these 5 steps has steps in them and like things about them, but it's applicable to everybody no matter
Mm-hmm.
what you're going through.
Right.
And so I found that, I mean, it was the greatest gift to be able to train other people to do this work, because then more people got to receive the benefit of self-love and receive the benefit of understanding the role that self-love plays. Because there are things like, there are people that I've trained that work with clients that just wouldn't resonate with me. You know, it's like the
Mm.
frequency of
Right.
certain people, right? When we sign up to work with mentors, it's because we love the frequency, we love the
Mm-hmm.
energy, we vibe with them. Like, you know, we have a relationship, and like not everybody's frequencies are a match, which is fine. There's
Correct.
nothing good or bad about it. It just is. And so I see like there are people who I've trained who are working with their clients who would not be a good client fit for me, but are an amazing client fit for them, and they get the benefit of the work. And it's an ever expanding network. It's such
Mm.
a powerful gift. Yeah, to be able to
Wow.
help people and helping other people and helping other people.
The ripple effect.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I hope that you are super proud of this work that you have literally created that is putting out in this ripple effect for all the other people. You know, like we were saying, there was nothing like this even 10 years ago out there.
Yeah.
And so now people can go seek these coaches out that you started. I think that's so
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we are the first self-love coach training. And now there are a few, which is fine. We need more self-love work, but I, you
Yeah.
know, it was such a gift to be able to do that. And I feel like, yeah, I am really proud of the work, and also it is like it is the most healing thing in the world for me
Mm.
to realize that my suffering was not meaningless. So
Right.
every time I hear of somebody who's benefited from this work in some way or another, I am healed on a greater level. So it's a mutual beneficial experience where, like, yes, I'm proud, and also like I receive healing every time that happens. And so
Yes.
I'm just humbled and in gratitude about it.
I love that because it kind of makes me think of, so I'm a Reiki master myself. And so when I do Reiki for other people, like sometimes like my friends or family will say, can, you do some Reiki for me? And maybe they might feel like they're putting me out or whatever. I'm like, no, it's totally fine, because what they don't understand is like, while I am just a channel, I too am receiving love and light as
Yeah,
well as them. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
it's spiritual work and just like helping others is always twofold.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously are going to experience like a positive effect just as much as the other person. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love everything that you're doing. I feel very called. Actually, um, I signed up. It's not, you're not offering it quite yet, but this is what I want to talk about next. Is
Yeah.
how
Let's
did
do
you
it.
become the ritual facilitator? We'll say, or communities. How do you call it? The ritual and ceremony facilitator. Is
I
that
mean,
what we call it?
honestly, yeah. Well, we'll talk about
I
it.
just like love the whole idea of it.
For sure. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it would have been like 2020, 2021. So I've been, obviously, as I mentioned, I grew up in ceremony, right with my great uncle. It
Right.
was not like, um as I said, an everyday thing. I did not live in the same house as him. He lived in Montana. I grew up in California, but he was part of my life. And over time, I became, as I said earlier on, like, I became more and more interested in spirituality. I
Hmm.
started dipping my toes into spirituality, and he started, noticing that, because not every single my mom was a yoga teacher, but she was like, she she was a yoga teacher. She definitely like was interested in a spiritual pursuit of it, but she was like really it was like very much like, I want to say like a hobby for her and not a lifestyle,
Mm.
but I
Hmm.
don't want to like undersell like the way that she integrated it into her life. But it wasn't like her career. I think
Right.
that's the better way to say it.
Yeah.
Teaching yoga wasn't her career. She did it at like our local community center, and like was so beloved by her like students who would come. Like, when
Hmm.
my mom passed away 2 years ago, and at her memorial service, it was filled with people who had been attending her yoga classes for, over a decade, who just
Oh
like
my gosh.
loved working with her in that way so much. And she wasn't like, she didn't own a big, spiritual business empire. She, wasn't ever
Yeah.
like on the cover of Yoga Journal, though. She was featured in I think it was like LA Yoga a couple of times.
Oh my
But
gosh.
she was like the community center yoga teacher. And that's like just a really like cozy, specific way of engaging with the work. um
Absolutely.
yeah. And so I guess all that is to say, like, she played an influence, but she also, like, she had her yoga life, and she also had like her regular like corporate life when she was like working in her regular job. um and so she like spoke the language, and also was just like living, a more traditional lifestyle. My
Right.
great uncle was like, his whole thing was being a shaman. Like, that was his lifestyle, an artist. Like, he made shrines and like sacred jewelry, and that was like how he supported himself, and was like fully immersed in the work. And like, I also like, in hearing myself talk about the differences between my mom and my great uncle, there is not one is better or worse when you're a spiritual person. I'm just thinking there
Hmm.
might be people here listening who are like, but I'm the community center yoga teacher, and I have my corporate job, and like, you're also doing the work, and you're also
Right.
amazing. So I just really want to speak to that, because I'm hearing myself, and I'm hearing the ways people might be interpreting that. So
Interpreting.
both
Yeah.
are good.
Yeah.
But my great uncle was like leading full ceremonies, and he recognized that like his daughters were not interested in doing that work for various reasons. So he was like, how do I keep my legacy alive? And he really saw a desire and passion for that within me. And my mom, this is to say, like, my mom was definitely interested in the work, but she wasn't interested in carrying it forward in that way.
Right.
So I did a vision quest with my great uncle, and he taught me how to lead ceremony. You know, he taught me how to carry on the legacy of our family, and the work that he did. You know, some of it he got from his mom, some of it he had to patchwork together, and it's so complicated because my uncle was engaging in like Indigenous Native American ceremonial practices.
Mm-hmm.
What's really complicated about that is, you know, we have my great grandmother was Indigenous, but she was kidnapped as a child and like raised white. So we don't have the memory, or we didn't have the memory passed forward in our family of the ways that her tribe were engaging with spiritual practices. We just had like little tidbits here and there.
Oh
And
my
this is
gosh.
a lot of people who come from families where there has been like trauma or rifts, or like, you know, one person comes into a family and like brings with them a whole set of things that nobody else understands. And it's like, how do you as a descendant honor that? And also honor the work that I've done within it is honoring like, okay, I both hold the genetic codes of like her and her people, but also I hold the genetic codes of these people who did some like really terrible stuff, you know?
Yep.
So how do I do that shadow work and reconcile that? And that's been really interesting to explore. That being said, my great uncle, a lot of the work he was doing is really in going back into the earth-based spirituality, because it had like been kind of in our family, but in like a very like oppressive structure. So it's like, how do we pull that out? And how do we also honor the fact that like we're white, you know, we're not Indigenous people, that we have an Indigenous ancestor. How do we do that without appropriation? And it's been very, for me, interesting to explore all of that. He really reclaimed a lot of the ceremony for our family, and it was so powerful. And he had such an impact on his community. And he was a sun dancer with a tribe that was close to where he lived, and considered an elder, and like really went back into that reclamation, which I think was so healing, I would imagine, for my great grandmother. And so anyway, he initiated me and taught me how to lead ceremony. And as I said, like, it's complicated, you know, because I don't want to take traditions that like are not mine to pass along. But there are parts of the work that he taught me that are universal, right? There are parts of leading ceremony that are done around, like in every culture around the world. If you go back far enough, you will find that earth-based spirituality, and you will find certain threads in how people hold ceremony. And so for me, and like doing all of this shadow work of understanding the complexity of my genetics and my DNA, and wanting to be like a really conscious and like loving and safe place for people, I've come to an understanding of like, okay, I can utilize some of what my great uncle Heyoka brought forward, and also like make it applicable to everybody anywhere. So that we're not we're not stealing anything from cultures that aren't our own, you know, ideally. And we're being as like aware as possible. So the ritual that I started doing was that it was like my way of making sense of like the complicated nature of my family's history, and wanting to be as ethical and safe as possible. And because it's so expansive in that like this ritual framework is universal, everybody can do it and feel the magic of it. And it's so powerful that way. I started in 2020, like, because, you know, we had nothing else to do. I started going live on Instagram and doing what I called guided rituals. And it was my morning practice that I developed for myself based off of the work that I did with my uncle, and, you know, all my other stuff that I was bringing to the table, my own spiritual belief systems as well. And it was so amazing to be able to just bring this work outward. For me, I'm such a Capricorn. I love my like systems. So
Yeah.
it's a
I get
5-step
that.
framework. Yet again. Yeah, I'm a triple earth. So that's
I'm
where that is.
double, so I get it.
Oh
I get
yeah,
it.
you
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the ritual facilitation is it's uh the core part is divination, interpretation, and integration. And the reason why this sets itself apart, I think, from other things I've done is that it combines a lot of the best of certain rituals. So the way that I started doing it, like on Instagram lives to make it really accessible, is I would pull a card based on the message that came through. I would channel and intuit what was present for the community and the vibes of everybody there. And really applying my intuitive downloads and like the divination message to the circumstances of the people present. And then we'd go immediately into an integration practice, which could look like a guided meditation, or could look like energy healing. It could look like affirmation work, or tapping, or, so many different practices. Obviously, I've talked about like how I've gathered so many things along the way. And so being able to like pull a card or intuit a message and be like, here's the practice we're going to do right now. So that this isn't just like you pull a card and go on with your day and forget about it, but like you actually bring it into your subconscious mind. You actually bring it into your body, and you do that through a tool that is one of the best possible tools that you could do, that is so easy and effective and simple, that allows you to really fully embody this message. Because I feel like it just takes so much longer to heal when you are doing your healing work and then like leaving it at the door.
Right.
But if you can actually bring it into your subconscious, if you can actually bring it into your body, which those integration practices offer us, then you're able to like get it much quicker. And it
I
can be
love
so
that.
effective. And like, yeah, my rituals that I do now, I have a whole guided rituals membership. They're all 20 minutes or less. And it's like your daily workout for your soul. It's your daily practice that allows you to connect with yourself and embody what energy you need. And I think it's really fun, and it's really effective. And it's really special. So that's
So
the ritual.
wait, so is that a membership community like you were just saying?
So I do have a membership community. And then I think what you were asking about. So this is, again, the same through line in my business. I started doing these guided rituals years ago, and then I started doing them in this membership. And then, because I train coaches, like I work with a lot of professional business owners and like healers. And so, of course, there's this continued question of like, how do you do that? Like, where did you learn that? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So when I did a retreat last year. I facilitated a retreat last September. And at this retreat, I decided I would dip my toes in teaching people the framework. And like, because I was again creating something from scratch.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I think this feels really good to do it in person in an intimate group. So I put together a whole like training manual. I really like dissected the work that I do to make it understandable and for people to replicate in their own authentic, unique way. I brought in this whole component of like understanding and really exploring your own ancestry, right? Like that was a huge part of, as I mentioned, the work that I did, and like healing and doing the shadow work of our ancestry. And so I did a ritual facilitator training in September in person at the retreat. And I was like, I don't even know if this is going to work. Like, I don't even know what this is going to look like. But when I did that, I was like, holy moly. Like, I just stumbled upon something that feels like a whole new level of soul work and purpose for me. Like that weekend that I did that retreat, or it was like more than a weekend, 4 days that I did that retreat, I was like, I feel like I'm like, especially because my mom and my grandmother and great uncle are all now in the spirit world. I just felt like they were like with me and like moving through me. And I just was like, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the work that I'm supposed to be doing right now. And because so many people couldn't come to the retreat who wanted to, because not everybody could travel, the timing,
Right.
whatever, I decided to offer a virtual one. And again, I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we're going to see. So we're halfway through now. So we're halfway through the first virtual training for ritual facilitators, and it has been phenomenal. Like, these experiences that these women are having are like full, like, revelatory experiences for them. Like, every week somebody comes forward and has this like miracle, like synchronistic experience, and like they're exploring divinity tools that they'd never even heard of before. And it's just been really beautiful to see the transformation that's occurring. And it's in all of the work that I do when I'm training people. It's really not just about like, here's how to do this work for other people. Like, here's the practical steps, though that's important. But it's also like, you have to walk the talk. So much of
Mm-hmm.
the programs that I offer, whether it's the self-love coach certification or any of the workshops that I do or the ritual facilitator training, it's all like, we got to immerse you in your own work as you're learning these trainings. Otherwise, it's not going to be nearly as powerful, because, to
Right.
circle back, your medicine is in your lived experience. Your
Mm.
medicine is in your adversity and your own healing journey, and diving deeper into that will anchor you into your gifts in a way you wouldn't be able to access them otherwise. And that's why holding space for people when they're in this type of training or certification that allows them to really like do the deeper healing work for themselves makes them better coaches, makes them better facilitators, makes them better practitioners,
Absolutely.
and also gives them the gift of the healing experience, which is like the
Right.
best gift in the world.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, you said you're halfway through. What is it? 9 weeks long?
It's 9 weeks. Yeah.
And I don't mean to like grill you, but I'm like super excited.
Go
When is the
for it.
next one? When's the next
When's
one?
the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Or you haven't figured that out yet.
I mean, I feel like yeah, definitely like sometime by the summer. I really
Okay.
want to get through, as you can tell, even though I'm very like structured in my teachings, when
Mm-hmm.
I offer my offerings, I'm
You
very
want to make
fluid
sure
about it.
you're ready to do the work, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah. Not
Yeah,
feel
and I'm
exhausted
like
or
really
burn out.
fluid. I have a habit of like launching something with like 2 weeks notice, like I'm
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
I feel the calling, I have to do this now. Like, here's
Yeah.
the offering, I'm creating it now.
Yeah.
So like, for better or for worse, like there are certainly entrepreneurs out there who are like, they plan like 2 years ahead, and that is
Mm-mm.
not me.
That's not me either. That's not me either. I'm like, oh my God, I have to do it right now. I'm
Yeah,
the
I
same way.
know. Yeah, I
Oh,
think that's being in the feminine flow. I
yeah.
feel like the calling comes, and I answer the call as soon as it comes, and things unfold as they do. But like, yeah,
Mm.
I hear the demand, so
I was
I'm
gonna
sure it'll
say
happen.
I was in the in Sarah Jenks's uh group, whatever, on Facebook. No, was it Facebook? Yeah, in Facebook. And I was like, I did not get the name of the woman who did the full moon
Mm.
ceremony. What is her name? I would love to
Yeah.
have her on the podcast. And then like all these people were like, we love her energy. And I was like, I
Oh,
know,
so
me too.
sweet.
I want to have her on. So yeah, I guarantee there'll be people even from there that are gonna be like, I want to start. You got to start somewhere, and if you, like you said, you feel called to the vibration of somebody else, like
Yeah.
you're either a match or you're not, and it's
Yeah.
okay that you're not. That means somebody else is. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like as you're talking about this class, I'm like, oh my God, I just so want to do it. I love taking classes. I'm very
Hmm.
curious. I love expanding my knowledge to the nth degree. And I'm like, right now I'm reading like three different books at the same time. Like
Yeah.
I love all the things. I love all the knowledge, but man, I am so envious of that part of your childhood that actually got to be in ceremony as a child. Like that would have
Yeah.
been like just so mind blowing for me. I was so
Yeah.
far from this way of thinking growing up that I have no idea how that would have changed me. Like
Mm.
what I would have had I gotten into this type of work at an earlier state. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think that that's so cool and magical that your uncle was like that.
I mean, it was really magical. And
Yeah.
I definitely am incredibly blessed to have had his influence and my mom's influence, you know, even though like she
Yeah.
wasn't living in my uncle like literally built a temple for
Right.
himself to live in. My
Oh,
mom
that
was like, you know,
temple.
we were living in suburbia, but
Yeah. Yeah.
she, you know, even with that, like she still being a yoga teacher like infused some of it
Yeah.
into our
Yeah.
lives too. So yeah, I mean it was a huge blessing. And you know, my grandmother was a Baptist minister's daughter, and she, I mean, she didn't like leave the church, but the way that she talked to me about religion, for her everything was angels, you know, it was always
Mm.
about angels. So I felt like I was really really blessed to have these spiritual
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, influences from a really young age that did end up, even though like so much of there's so much trauma in my family, the
Mm-hmm.
seeds of the spiritual influence opened the door for healing. And I really understand that as a huge blessing and huge gift.
Yeah, and I just love, like you said, that you think your uncle broke cycles, and you're obviously breaking cycles in your lineage, and so you now have a 2-year-old, and
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you're making life just that much easier for him to go out and do his magic. So I think that that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I
I
mean,
love
I
it.
feel like for me, the next thing is because I'm like so in divine feminine work that I'm like, I feel like such a newbie when it comes to understanding sacred masculine. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it?
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
is that? Like
Yeah.
feels foreign to me. So by having a son, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
been such an invitation for me and my husband when I have these conversations with him of like what does it mean for us to raise a boy, a
Right.
man, you know?
Right.
And like how, yeah, how can I equip him with enough tools to be able to like hold his energy no matter like what the toxic masculinity patriarchy
Right.
throws his way, because it's going to like we were
Oh
talking about,
yeah.
no matter how much you want your daughters, you know, or daughter to love herself, she's still going to
Mm-hmm.
hear about the like
Yep.
body stuff. And it's like, no matter how much I know I want my son to like be in his power as a man, there's going to just be some stuff he's going to deal with as a man.
Yep.
Like, you know, the
Yeah.
patriarchy serves none of us. Like it seems like it serves men, but it does not. So how,
Yeah.
yeah, that's my next thing. I don't have it figured out. So if somebody else does,
No, I
who's
know.
listening,
The only thing I
let me
can
know.
say, the only thing I can say to that is like listening. I have a 15-year-old son and almost 14-year-old daughter, and they both come home from school with different lunchroom stories, right? Like
Yeah.
what goes on in a boys' table, what goes on in the girls' table. And, but again, it's very much, they're children, and
Yeah.
they're they're not the most mature, and they don't have all the experiences, so the things that they're saying they don't realize are super damaging to somebody who's sitting there, because it might be
Yeah.
completely just out of left field or just different life experiences that person's having, whatever. But in terms of like how raising your son and his masculinity and all of that, I think the best way is to just continuously keep it balanced. Show them, so show your children um, the importance of both masculine and feminine energies, but equally.
Yeah.
And then kind of just let them guide their way and which way they're going to be leaning more towards, or will they be more balanced? Like, I don't know. I try to make
Yeah.
sure that I don't have those. Um, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like societal preconceived notions that I'm putting on either one of my children. Like, you're a girl, you need to be doing this. You're a boy, you need to be
Oh,
doing this.
yeah.
No, you know what I mean? I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that they see it from both angles, and then it seems balanced, and they can kind of choose how they're going to conduct their life from there. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
yeah, just
Yeah. I love
balance.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. We have been like really conscious about like the toys that he has or like the clothes that he has, that it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
boy, 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 you know, that he
Yes.
has like
Yes.
access to playing with whatever he wants to play with. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're really, really open about that. And I think that's such a good, you know, I've thought about that in terms of like what he's exposed to and like the toys he plays with, but thinking about that in terms of just like the energetic frequencies of like
Mm,
masculine and feminine is not something
yep.
that I've considered. So thank you
Yeah.
for planting that seed with me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have my own preschool, like I said in one of my emails. So for the last 10 years, I've been teaching preschool, and a lot of my kids' toys went into the preschool, but they were allowed to, go in there and play and experience all the toys, you know what I mean? And see all the
Yeah.
things. And never in a million years would I allow anyone to kind of give them the hairy eye if they were going towards something that wasn't,
Oh, yeah.
typical of the sex that they were in or something like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my son is like belting Little Mermaid, and my
oh my
husband
god,
and
I love
I
it.
are obsessed with it, but he also loves
Yes.
dinosaurs and
Yeah.
sharks. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, she's going to go through so many different phases. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I had so much fun. You have a plethora of knowledge. I could just sit here and pick your brain all day and just be like, "Oh my god. I can't
Oh,
wait to take the facilitator class. I am
I'm
definitely going
so
to be doing
excited.
that." I know, I'm so excited because I've just recently, my girlfriend and I, we kind of did like a little quiet cord cutting ceremony, just the two of us. Like, she asked me to help her, and I just couldn't believe like how moved we both were by the end of
Mm,
it. And it was just like a little mini ceremony that I kind of just put together off the cuff. I don't do that type of work, but it was
yeah.
so magical. And she was like, she works at a YMCA at a town near me. She's like, I really think you should just maybe have a little circle of a few more women and, do something similar to that. So she kind of planted the seed, and I'm kind of seeing where it's going, but I get excited when I think about it. So that's why I was looking into your class. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. And I think there are so many people who are like doing this work for themselves and want
Yeah.
so deeply to be able to bring it into their families or bring it into their communities. And just they're
Hmm.
like, how? Like,
Right. Where
how
do you
would I
start?
do
Where do
that?
you start? I
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And, being able to give that gift to people. Like, I just went over to a friend's house who, experienced something really challenging. And I was
Mm.
able to do a healing ceremony for her this
Oh,
morning while my son was at school. And just being
wow.
able to, like, when you have a close friend that you love and you see them suffering, being able to be like, okay, I'll bring you like I'll bring you muffins and like lasagna,
Right.
but also would you benefit from a healing ceremony, and just being able
Right.
to offer that to somebody,
Right.
and like they can
Oh,
say yes or no, but like it is such a gift. And
such a gift.
yeah, and being able to do it in a way that, again, like, is ethical and is safe and is like
Hmm.
respectful, because it's complicated, when there's
Right.
so many different cultures and belief systems and religions. And so in this training, what I find to be the most exciting and inspiring part for me is empowering people to like go back into their own ancestry or their own family lineage and their own soul lineage, and to be able to call forward the gifts that are already within them, so that it
Right.
feels authentic and it doesn't feel like you're just adopting something because it's the only thing that you've ever seen done before.
Right. Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So how can people find you in case they don't want to check out the show notes, which I'll be putting it in there, but
Yeah. I mean, I probably, out of like all of the places where you could find me most often on Instagram at the Self
okay.
Love Lifestyle. But I mean, I have all of my programs listed on my website, melaniemonaco.com.
Okay.
And you can email me, melanie@melaniemonaco.com. I mean, I'm also on Facebook too. And like, somewhat on TikTok. TikTok, like, I don't
I
know.
get
I
it.
just
I
yeah.
get it. I get it.
Yeah. But like, you can always send me a message, especially Instagram DM. I feel like is a really fun place to connect. But yeah, that's
Awesome.
how you can reach me.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And to the listeners, I hope that you were able to gather some really good, juicy information and maybe can start to apply it to your life starting now.
Yeah.
And I will see you next time. Melanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Heather.